Hello my friends, I hope everyone is fine today. I feel fine. Yesterday I was a bit off, which was a bit difficult to understand why. But I do know that there were some things going on in the sky yesterday. There was a solar eclipse combined with a new moon, which is always the case when there's a solar eclipse. And there were some other kinds of activity, movements up there in the sky, aspects between the different celestial bodies, Mercury going retrograde and everything. Sounds woo-woo, huh? Well, the astronomical part of it isn't woo-woo, of course. That's science, as we all know. Celestial bodies, planets, orbiting and all that. You know, one never knows what's going to be seen as science in the future. What's woo-woo today can be science tomorrow. You never know. What used to be woo-woo is science today. So anyway, the other day I visited this online seminar about how the media has handled the pandemic so far, and the occasion was to award science-minded journalism. Science-minded journalism. And one of the keynote speakers, the guy who introduced the whole thing, he said some things that made it obvious that he was very critical towards the Swedish strategy in this pandemic. Because he compares Sweden to the Nordic neighbors. And if you do that, it's obvious that the death toll in Sweden from this pandemic is much higher than in the Nordic countries. And this is something that everyone who is critical towards the Swedish strategy and has that bias, so to speak, always does. I mean, those who like the Swedish strategy, they always compare with other countries. You can compare with lockdown countries like England, France, Belgium, Hungary, Czech Republic, and so on. So there are always countries you can choose from if you want to pursue your view on this, so to speak. And then there was another guy speaking about he had been the head of a group who did some studies on face masks and whether face masks worked or not, and they came to the conclusion that they were actually functional and you should wear them in most occasions, and he was so disappointed that this report wasn't referred to in the media, in the Swedish media, as much as he would have liked. But because on the same day that these guys came out with their study, there was another Danish study coming out that said that there is no evidence for face masks working actually. I mean, not in the way that you would expect in order to demand people to wear them all the time. And this was reported in the media. So he was disappointed at that, and he kind of found that unscientific. But I mean, they did refer to his study, it's just that it was Danish. And then a bit later there was a third person who was complaining that the media had been too nationalistic, that they hadn't been international enough to report all that was happening around the world, and all the studies that were coming out from different countries. They were focusing too much on the Swedish authorities and what was coming out in Sweden and all that, which also wasn't true, because I mean, just a few minutes earlier there had been evidence that they had talked about Swedish media referring to that Danish study, which was not Swedish, obviously. So I mean, it's this thing with science, you know, and what you consider science. It has very much to do with what you want to see in the world, what your opinions are, what your bias is. I mean, it's often, you know, that you just convey your views and you call it science. You call it science because you want to be trustworthy, you want to sound trustworthy, and if you pick up science from your pocket, you know, out of your pocket, it's supposed to be reliable, and you can't really question it because it's science. But I mean, science is something that's it's an activity that is pursued by people, by human beings who have their backgrounds and their experiences and their views and everything, and their different levels of intelligence and different levels of spiritual awakening and whatever. Human beings are doing this. I mean, there's nothing wrong with science. I'm not saying that. The scientific method is brilliant and we should continue using it. But I mean, what is science is not that, you know, chiseled in stone. I think people who are not spiritual, who are materialists. And I happen to know that that first keynote speaker I was mentioning, he is a materialist. Materialists often kind of refer to science as if it were an entity of its own, a force, an outer force, much like religion actually, because they don't have any religion, so they swap it for science. So science is their religion in that respect. As if it, I mean, science is just an activity that human beings are doing, like everything else. And it's the same in everyone has their pet topics, you know, and pet things they want to put forward as examples. I have climate change, which is one of my favorite subjects, and if you listen to someone like Greta Thunberg, you know, who says, listen to the scientists, listen to the science, listen to science. She says that all the time. Thing is, she doesn't. When she says, I don't want you to be afraid, I want you to panic, she is not listening to science. She's listening to the policymakers. She's listening to maybe a few scientists who are alarmists, but she's not listening to the whole scientific community, that's for sure. So use science, take science as something beautiful and something really important, but I mean, it's often not that simple. Things are not as simple. This pandemic is very difficult to understand how it works, and which has been shown this last year. And same thing with climate change. It's very complicated, you know. I think you should combine this with your own, check things yourself, think for yourself, and use your own intuition and your heart. Heart-brain coherence is crucial here, I think, to understand what's happening. I mean, talking about climate change and environmental damage and all that, it doesn't take science to understand that we shouldn't destroy the planet. That's a no-brainer. I mean, or a no-harder. Of course we shouldn't destroy our planet, but what is destroying the planet and what is not destroying the planet is not that completely easy to understand, actually. I mean, is it okay to perhaps kill a few animals in some species that is proliferating fast? Maybe, or maybe not. Could we cultivate the forest to harvest trees to get wood for building houses and using for different types of material? Probably. I mean, it's not as simple as just saying that, oh, we're just terrible, we're just destroying the earth, and if we look at science, science tells us what we should do and what we should not do. That is simply not true. It's not as simple as that. Use your heart and your brain. Look at science, think for yourself, and use your intuition. That's the best way you can understand how this world works, I think. Have a nice weekend now. Love you. Bye-bye.